Greetings, welcome to Arcade Heroes, the Arcade Heroes IAPPA 2022 live stream, preview, pregame show, whatever you want to call it. So my name is Adam, and like always, I'm here to guide you through what to expect at IAPPA 2022. Now, if you're not familiar with what IAPPA is, if you're new around here, well, if you're that new, well, my name again is Adam. I'm an arcade operator based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm broadcasting from one of my arcades right now. And so I run the Arcade Heroes website, talk about arcade news, arcade video arcades, pinball, some VR, so stuff like that. And so I will be previewing the next giant trade show where all the latest greatest stuff for this arcade business is going to be unveiled, and that's called IAPPA, and it's held every year in Orlando, Florida, and they set something up so that it's going to be there guaranteed through, I think, 2030, maybe even 2040. I'm not sure exactly. In the past, they had held it at some other locations like Las Vegas, but because Orlando is kind of the theme park capital of the world, you have Walt Disney World, Universal Studios, SeaWorld, other stuff around there. They just decided to kind of headquarter it there. Now, I did post the pregame show in text with some videos and stuff on arcadeheroes.com, just published right as I started the stream. So if you want to go back and read over this afterwards, then go right ahead. That's what it's there for. And also this is what I'm going to be using, just kind of going through this, but also adding any additional information as to what I know. Taken days to kind of compile this all together, and been getting emails from different manufacturers as to what they're going to bring. Now, it is possible that somebody will send an email after I've already published this and previewing what they're going to take to the show, and so this is just best of knowledge. One reason I'm doing it today is I'm taking the day tomorrow off so that I can do some other things and get ready for the show. So yeah, we'll go from there, but again, this is to the best of my knowledge, and it is possible that something can change last minute. I saw an email this morning saying that there's a company called Mediamation where they've decided to not do their booth. They are on the map, or they were on the map, and because of all these installs that they have to do, they decided they need to focus all their resources on installing stuff for customers as opposed to going to a trade show. So anyways, we're going to start off with arcade-focused booths, and now again, this is primarily stuff would be video games, pinball, and what I like to call videmption, which is video redemption games. I generally don't focus a lot on ticket redemption just because that stuff tends to sell itself. You can put it into any arcade, and it doesn't really need a lot of hype to make money, but it helps more to spread the good word about arcades this way, and so that's what we're going to do. So we will, as always, do this alphabetically. I'm going to start off with Adrenaline Amusements. They're at booths 643 and 647, and interestingly enough, I have not seen any preview whatsoever from them as to what they're bringing. So with two booths, you would have to assume that they're going to have something brand new. Their most recent piece was Hungry Hungry Hippos, which I've seen some love and some hate about out there, particularly from arcade technicians that have to repair it. But it is a big piece, very mechanical, and that one's purely redemption. But generally speaking, Adrenaline has brought something new to the show, so I will expect it. I just have no clue what it is. Now, way back in, I think it was 2020, they did have a video game that they put out on test in Florida called Dragons, where it looked like you were riding a dragon and doing that, which was interesting, but never seen anything about it since, so I don't know if that just got canned or what the deal might be, but that's Adrenaline. If you go over to booth 640, oh, and by the way, let me pull up the map here. So if you go to IAPPA.org and pull up expos, you can find the map. So to give you an idea, this is how big of a trade show it is. This is the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, and IAPPA fills up the entire thing. In fact, it's so big that it goes outside. That's what these exhibits are. Now, back in 2019, when the show was really big, they took up this part of the parking lot and they set up some tents so that more exhibitors could go to the show. And so otherwise, everything that you see here that's yellow, that's a booth, and somebody's filled it up. And it looks like there are a few booths there. These blue ones would be available. And so, yeah, just not a ton of available spots, but it looks like since they do have some inside, no reason to set up tents outside and to go there. And yes, 80s and 90s kids will remember the old days of arcades. But what we're talking about here are going to be brand new arcade machines. Now, there are going to be some things there that have kind of an old school style to them, so I'll get into that, of course. But anyways, I guess one thing that's always kind of old school, even though it's new, is pinball. Funny enough, I've seen plenty of retrocades where they refuse to have anything after some arbitrary date, like the owner chooses 1996, and anything after that's not retro or something like that. But they'll always have brand new pinball machines, and that's because, for the most part, a lot of pinball machines aren't super different from what you had in the 80s and 90s. Now, granted, that has changed some in more recent years with LED lighting and LCD screens, but prior to the LCD screen, like if I took a Ghostbusters pinball machine, which I think was 2015, 2016, and I hopped in my DeLorean and took it back to 1984, nobody would really know the difference. And so anyways, American Pinball, they are going to be at the show with Legends of Valhalla, which has been out there as the deluxe version. They recently announced that they are bringing out the classic version. They needed to fulfill all their orders for the deluxe first, or DX I think they call it, and then they would start filling the classic ones. The layout is exactly the same. The difference is just fewer molded toys, as far as I'm aware. At Pinball Expo 2022, they did tease that they have a couple of new games in the works, but they didn't say what those were. I would be very surprised to see them show up with that at IAPPA, but it could happen. Never know. Next in the A's, Amusement Source International, booth 209. And this company is headed up by Corey Haynes. He was a CEO of GameWorks at one time, and they import a lot of equipment from China. And so they're one place where you can find a lot of these games. If we hop on over to this link, one of the games they're going to have at the show is called Skyrider 2, which I've mentioned on the blog before. And what's interesting about this game is it's like Prop Cycle, like a brand new Prop Cycle. And it comes as a twin model, so that means both controllers. It's basically just like this is one unit. And you do have to pedal to make things go in the game, and it looks like, just like Prop Cycle, you have to run into balloons. And so that will be there, as will Sniper Strike 2, which I posted this into shorts as I borrowed it from LinkedIn. And yeah, it's very brief, but yeah, it's like Silent Scope, but with 4 guns. And so you do look into the scope, and there's a screen in there, and then you snipe guys that you see. But not, from what I've played of these different Chinese-made sniper games, they aren't quite as dynamic as the Konami ones, not quite as polished. But if you wanted a sniper game, there you go. And the guns that they put on these are very nice. They even have hydraulics where you can raise and lower the gun, so depending on your height, you can move it to something that maybe is more comfortable for you. Now, also, I should mention Replay Magazine, who I do write for, usually on occasion. Sometimes I miss sending them an article. They did an IAPPA preview, and in there, I noticed that there were a few manufacturers who did not send them something, so they weren't included. So like Adrenaline Amusements, as already mentioned, would be one of those. But let's see, for Amusement Source, they mentioned that they have Dino Trainer, Magic Drop, Magic Rabbit, Pirate Legend, Planet Roll. Those are all redemption games, except Dino Trainer is a Videmption game. The Skyrider 2, the Sniper Strike, Sink Pong, which I thought that was a Co-Muse game. Woodpecker 2, Zombie Bowling. So again, mostly redemption stuff from these guys, but I had seen a preview somewhere, I think it was an ad in Replay here, where they were going to show some kind of preview of a game called X-Spy, which looks just like Sega's VR Agent. And so it has a gun that is attached to an overhead arm, and it has the VR headset's fused into the back, and so you put your face into it and shoot at things. And so I don't know if that means they'll just have a video of it or what. That might be the case there, but that's Amusement Source International. Next up is Andamiro USA. Of course, Andamiro itself is based out of Korea, Seoul, South Korea, and Andamiro is also pretty heavy on the redemption stuff, so they're going to have a new Avengers ball drop game. Let me see, the exact name to this was Avengers Infinity Stone Challenge, and it has these spinning targets, and you try and drop the ball into the target, then you play to spin the wheel to win tickets. And they have a new SpongeBob pusher. It's always a little hard to follow how many SpongeBob games Andamiro has because they do a lot. But the biggest surprise to come out of Andamiro is that they announced that Pump It Up will be there. And I remember at last year's IAPPA, there were people saying that, oh, Pump It Up's dead. Not Andamiro people, but other people that were into rhythm gaming. And they were saying, yeah, everything I've heard is after the pandemic, they're done. But this shows that maybe that was the case at some point, but Andamiro's decided to bring it back, and in part that might be due to the big success of Step Maniacs that's out there. Now, I've had people asking me, do you know if Chrono Circle will be there? They haven't said anything about Chrono Circle whatsoever, so my guess is no. That game is available at Round 1 USA, but yeah, whether or not it's actually going to show up there doesn't seem like it's going to be available for the rest of us if you really wanted that one. Although I'm sure if you really, really want to add that game to your location, if you're an operator watching this, I'm sure there's a way. Just contact Andamiro USA, and I'm sure they could figure out how to import it, but I don't know how much it would cost. Now we have Bandai Namco Amusements. They have two booths, 900 and 1000. And let's see, on the map. Oh, yep, right there. Yeah, right here. And so Bandai Namco, they pretty much always have a big booth, and part of the reason why is they combine the American and the European arcade divisions together for these shows. Now, oftentimes that is very confusing, especially if you're new to the industry, because when you go to their booth, you'll see games from Raw Thrills as well as Adrenaline Amusements and maybe some other company there. And so people are often like, why do they have these at the Namco booth? But that's because of Bandai Namco Europe. They are also a distributor, and so they'll distribute Raw Thrills and Adrenaline products throughout Europe and I think other parts of the world like the Middle East. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding. And so that's why they show them there, because IAPPA is a very international trade show. I often say it's like the E3 of the arcade industry, and so you do have a lot of customers that come from pretty much everywhere, and because of that, it has a somewhat more international focus. And so yeah, but as to what they are going to bring, they definitely should have Dead Heat Unleashed, which I've been previewing a number of times on the channel. Big thanks to the user that sent this in. I wanted to say it was Paul Kim. Sorry if I got that wrong. But he sent me this video. Funny enough, somebody from Bandai Namco was there when he was filming this, and they got a picture of him filming it too. So that's amusing. But yeah, this cabinet, it's definitely, this is a prototype, so I would guess that it may change a bit from what you see here to the final production model, but it's definitely it's similar to the Mario Kart and the Maximum Tune 5 cabinets, but they've obviously changed it a little bit. Like Maximum Tune does not have these LED T-molding things here. It's actually a little bit thicker on the sides than that, but the control panel itself is definitely like Maximum Tune, and that's the reason why it seemed to have a little indentation where the Bana Passport is. But I've had a lot of people asking me, oh, I bet this will have Bana Passport. There's no indication that it will. The one issue with having the Bana Passport is that would likely increase the price of the game, because that needs a kiosk, and then that also could mean an online fee, and Namco's learned that if they have online fees, that limits their sales, as they learned with Mario Kart. And so that's why they got rid of the online fee with Mario Kart, is because as soon as Mario Kart went offline, their sales exploded. But yeah, right here is where you would see the Bana Passport reader. But again, I highly doubt they're going to use that. It's just because it's the molds that they used as to why that's there. And so, and I also wouldn't be surprised if anything changes on the seats. But yeah, prototypes are usually like that. They just need to be good enough to get the job done, but then you finalize things and release it later. But I also would expect to have things like Pac-Man Battle Royale Championship there. Whether or not they'll have something else brand new, I don't know. I mean, again, this would be probably the star piece at their booth. If they do have anything else brand new, I would be expecting it to be Redemption. Like last year, they had some sort of Harley Quinn Joker themed whacker, but kind of seems like that might not have gotten through. All right, let's go to Baytech Entertainment, booth 1015. They always have something different. They're often Redemption based, and they don't really announce it in advance. And so what they could have, I don't know. I mean, they'll have their stuff that's been popular, like Axe Master and Connect 4 Hoops. But the only thing they've announced is a pure Redemption game called Big Ticket Drop. But again, it's very common for Baytech to bring some test pieces to the show, but then IAPPA or Amusement Expo is the only time you see them. Like if they don't take off, if they don't test well, then it's normal that Baytech will just quietly erase snap them out of existence to do an Infinity War reference. All right, Betson and Raw Thrills. And so going to the IAPPA map here, and there's Baytech. I mean, see, with that big of a booth, I would be very surprised if they only unveil one game, and so it'll just have to be a surprise. But here we go. Here's Betson / Raw Thrills, and so they have a bit of space too, not quite as much as like Baytech or Coastal Amusements, but it's a lot. Now, in every instance, the Betson booth is pretty much just the Raw Thrills booth. Even though Betson is a distributor and they will distribute other companies' products, there's always been this very close relationship between Betson and Raw Thrills. And so it's rare that Betson will show off something that's not Raw Thrills related. It has happened, though, in the past, but yeah, for the most part, that's just not the case. And so at the booth there, you can definitely expect to see the new Fast and Furious arcade. I guess I should be muting these just so I don't get dinged or something, because they use licensed music. But yeah, it's kind of like Cruisin' Blast, but with the Fast and Furious license attached to it. I mean, one criticism I would have of all the Fast and Furious games is they really have nothing to do with the movies at all, but I get it on if you did license the likenesses of like Vin Diesel or Paul Walker, then it would increase the cost of the game. Although I don't know if it would increase it a lot with Paul Walker being deceased, or if people consider that in bad taste. I don't know. But yeah, this game, it has something to do with missions that you have to accomplish while you're driving, so it is more than simply just driving from point A to point B, but it does use the typical cruising / Fast and Furious setup of doing the open, point A to point B sort of racing, open circuit, and there it mentions the top secret missions and lots of explosions and just over the top craziness. And I'm trying to remember if we have a let me hop over here. I'm sure you guys have all seen the cabinet image for it. It's not on the front page, so no big deal. And anyways, we got that's the only thing they've really announced is coming to the show. What else they might have? I mean, with that big a booth, it's very possible. Now, last year, Raw Thrills didn't unveil anything new at the show, and that's just because of the issues stemming from the pandemic. And they, I guess Minecraft would have been kind of the new thing, or King Kong. But they should have King Kong of Skull Island there. They should have Superbikes 3 there. They should have, I believe, Minecraft Series 2 cards are launching at the show. We've also seen a few games out on test that maybe will show up. Like, there was an SD version or a standard version of Halo Fireteam Raven. And also MotoGP VR. Tecmo Bowl 2022, I was told, was canceled, so I don't know if that's actually going to be there or not. But we'll see. And checking the chat, do you think people will start picking up these games after this is done? Well, some of the games are available already. So Fast and Furious Arcade is one example of a game that you can buy now. I was just told that they had a very limited quantity. It was something like 100 units were made at first, but then in the month of November, they were going to have 400 units available. And now it's very common at IAPPA that, I mean, it's always kind of a mixture. Sometimes manufacturers will have something available at the show, but oftentimes it's something that's still a little too new, and so it won't actually see a release until, say, March of next year. And March is generally the time where we have the spring show, Amusement Expo. And so you get a preview of the game at IAPPA, and then you get the final version at Amusement Expo. And so that might be the case of what happens with Dead Heat Unleashed. I know that's what they've done with a lot of different titles, like Namco in particular likes to do that. Raw Thrills, it's a hit or miss. Sometimes they have things ready at the show, like the Fast and Furious. Sometimes they have things that are going to take some time, like King Kong VR was that case. But I hope that answers that question. Now, one thing that does bug me about IAPPA being this time of year is the fact that it's so close to Thanksgiving. Now, I know that for a lot of the international companies that doesn't really matter, but for any American company, what's really frustrating is that you'll be talking with somebody at the show, and they'll be like, yeah, I'll get back to you. And then when you try and get back to them, it's like, oh gosh, I'm so busy because I'm doing the show, and it's Thanksgiving, and, you know, a lot of people go and visit family or whatever, and then, of course, you start getting the Christmas season, so there's a lot of people who forget that they talk to you during the show because they're just so busy afterwards. And so I would love it if IAPPA would change from being the week before Thanksgiving to maybe like the middle of October, as that might help things, business deals work out a little better. But I don't know. I know some people get their deals done just fine. Next up, Chicago Gaming Company, booth 200. Now, I haven't been following the rumors on Chicago Gaming. They don't have any social media presence, and they don't really answer emails a lot. And so it's usually a surprise as to what they have. Now, at last IAPPA, as there's this video on here shows it, you had Cactus Canyon Remake, which I thought was a fantastic game. But whether or not they're going to have something else there, I have no idea. But it's always a nice surprise, I guess. And also, kind of going back really quick to Raw Thrills, they often will have some kind of surprise. So they may have something there that we've never even seen before that has been out on test. In fact, I remember the VP of Raw Thrills once telling me he thought it was kind of amusing that I had never mentioned X Games Snowcross, oh wait, not the X Games Snowcross, X Games Snowboarder that they brought to IAPPA, because I was telling him, I was like, wow, when did you guys, I'm surprised I hadn't seen this before. I hadn't heard of this on location test. He's like, yeah, it's actually been on test for 4 years. I'm surprised too that you haven't talked about it on the blog. And so sometimes there's just games that fly under my radar. All right, Coastal Amusements, as I mentioned, yeah, they're right here. They always have a big booth. They always have a lot of redemption stuff, some redemption too, but yeah, as you can see here, they are bringing a new video game, which probably will have redemption features on it, but it's mainly a video game. And so if a location like mine, if I was interested in this, I could turn the tickets off and then it would just play like a regular video game. Nobody would know the difference. But this was made by a Chinese company called Ace Amusement. They say amusement instead of amusements. But as you can tell from the screenshot here, it's kind of typical light gun fare. When you fight big enemies, you have to shoot the little targets, circular targets. Now over here you can see there's multiple guns, so I believe this does have some kind of gun switching feature, kind of a nod to Time Crisis there. But definitely be interested in checking this one out, as this seems like their main video game that they're going to have there. Now, one nice thing that I always like about the IAPPA map is you can click on them and there's an exhibitor profile. Now, a lot of exhibitors don't say anything, or they just throw out some generic stuff as to, we're a company that makes games. But one nice thing is Coastal Amusements is one of the few that actually says, hey, this is what we're bringing to the show. And so Break the Plate, which was at IAPPA last year, it's the one where you toss balls at a screen and it breaks a virtual plate. Snow Day, which is a kid's redemption game. Road Trip, I'm not sure if that's a redemption game or a videmption game. Dinosaur Era is definitely videmption. Slide Up sounds like a redemption game. And then Zombieland 4-player, that's definitely videmption. But again, you should be able to shut off the tickets if that's not your thing, like me. And so, but definitely interested in seeing how Galaxy Rangers goes. Oh, I think I got a link here for Zombieland. Let's hop over. Yeah, so here's Zombieland, mounted guns, kind of in the style of the Jurassic Park arcade game that Raw Thrills did, but 4 of them. So as long as the frame rate on the game doesn't suck, sometimes that's the case with some of these redemption games. It should always be 60. If there's any developers out there in the sound of my voice, minimum 60 for any arcade game. But looks like you shoot zombies. My guess is that the gameplay on this might be similar to like Iceman, Ice Walker, which is another game that has been very popular. Yeah, here's Ice Walker. This debuted at IAPPA 2022. Yeah, Iceman definitely. That's the game that I'm thinking about when I talk about a horrible frame rate. I mean, it's not even 30. That game's like 15 frames a second, and it's like, what is this, 1993 3D? Come on. It just blew my mind how bad the frame rate was on that. But to be fair, Ice Walker, they did fix it. It was 60 frames a second. It's basically the same game, and you've probably seen Iceman or Ice Walker out there, because it's where it shoots actual water at the screen, and it has this fake grass which will create mist. It's a cool little gimmick, and for Iceman it did extremely well. Yeah, that's the only reason it definitely made money, is because it shoots the water. But it's a cool gimmick that you can't get that at home. There's no way you're going to be able to set up a squirt gun game with your Switch or your PS5 unless you want to fry all of your electronics. And so that's the nice thing that you can do with arcades, some sort of things like that you cannot simply do at home. And so that's always a nice appeal. I don't know, Blake, I know you're a technician, if that's much of a headache for you or not. I don't have one of these water games here, but I've noticed at trade shows standing around, like some of the spray does get out of the game, and so I'm sure you have to change the water out. I know they have filtration systems, like UV light filtration systems, but there's still going to be some water loss that you'd have to do. But yeah, that's Coastal Amusements, and if you've ever visited their website, they have a blend of redemption and videmption games. This Wild West Shootout game I liked. One of the things, this was, I think, unveiled at IAPPA 2019, and I have seen this out there. But what I really liked about this one was the gun. It was like an Old West 6-shooter, but it actually snaps every time you pull the trigger, kind of like an old toy gun that I remember having back in the 80s. And but it's kind of a cheap but effective way to do force feedback on light guns. Now let's see, where were we? And yeah, Blake mentions that the maintenance sucks. Oh, and you have to deal with 2 of them. Lucky you. Now, we get to Elaut USA. Now, Elaut themselves is based, I think, out of Belgium, if I'm wrong on that, or headquartered out of Belgium. It might be Germany, I can't remember for certain, but their U.S. division. Well, Elaut's actually grown a lot. Like Elaut themselves, I oftentimes didn't pay much attention to them because they were just coin pusher type games, and crane machines, and that's just not something that, of course, I'm into. But I know crane fans, from what I hear, generally consider Elaut to be the top of the line, and the price reflects that too. But over the past several years, they've been buying up other companies within the business, and so they purchased Coast to Coast Entertainment, which generally made lower-end crane machines. They purchased Benchmark Games, which did a lot of redemption stuff, very popular redemption stuff, and they've recently teamed up with, they haven't purchased, but they've teamed up with Touch Magics, which I should throw out in as a nod. They are one of the top sponsors on Arcade Heroes, and so like on the ad that they sent me, they're showing off the stuff that they're bringing to IAPPA, and so you'll be able to find this at the Elaut USA booth 829. But one of the big things they were touting was the Carnival Cups crane. From my understanding, you play the Carnival Cups game itself, and then that unlocks the claw to get the prize, but I could be wrong about that, but that's my understanding. And then, of course, as you've seen there, they have link play for some of their other games like Space Warp and Mega Blaster. And so they've sent me some previews of the Space Warp multiplayer before. I think they at one point were testing 4 players, but I think they might have just settled on 2. But let's get back down there. Last year they also had the Surf and Safari by Team Play and the Golden Mace by Box Blaster VR. Now, going to my replay here. Okay, so yeah, it does mention in replay for Benchmark Games, not sure if you can see that super well, they will have Golden Mace there, but they've definitely modified the cabinet, because when this debuted at last IAPPA, they made it seem like it was going to be launching any time, but when I kept checking their site, it just wasn't mentioned as shipping. But this says that it'll be shipping late January 2023. What Golden Mace is, it's a VR game by Box Blaster, and Golden Mace is an odd game where you are some sort of warrior in a medieval fortress, or a Viking fortress maybe. Of course, I guess that's medieval too. Pre-medieval, and you have these enemies flying at you like they're being catapulted at you, and so you have to grab them and throw them, but you can also grab weapons and throw it at the guys. Like I said, it's kind of strange, but it's unique, at least. And then, of course, anything that Elaut does with their pushers, like I think they have a new Wizard of Oz, from the replay preview. Oh, and just noticing here, the road trip game that I mentioned at Coastal is definitely a redemption game. Yeah, they'll have Emerald City Pusher. So I know the Elaut, excuse me, pushers do extremely well. They make a lot of money, but they're also pretty pricey to start off with. Next up, we got EXA Arcadia, booth 415. Now, of course, everybody knows that I've talked a lot about EXA Arcadia out there, and I have a couple of their cabinets. I have some of their games. As mentioned in the preview post on Arcade Heroes, let me close out some of these tabs before things get too busy. I mentioned that they are bringing the Arc 1 cabinet to IAPPA. Now, EXA has sent me some photos. They asked they not be shared publicly yet, but some people were complaining about the bezel here. And so the reason why the bezel has all this blank space, one is because you can take the monitor as an operator and you can just change it from horizontal to vertical. And because of that, they need the extra space for it to be able to handle that. But also, this allows the operators to take the instruction cards that come with each one of these, with one of the cartridges, and just pretty much paste it to the plexiglass. So they show me a picture of it having 4 of those instruction cards, like 2 up here, 2 down there, and that looked fine. I've also seen angled shots of this. Like, I know it looks maybe a slightly strange, like you can't get a full feel for what the cabinet's like in person from photos, but like angled shots are a little better. There's actually a couple of arcades out there that already have these. Logan Arcade, I think it is, out in Illinois, grabbed one, and there was some other one in the Midwest. And so some people can actually see these out there. But one thing about this one, the control panel is modular, so you can purchase an Arc 1 with a certain control panel, like a 2-player, but then you can reach out to your distributor and get a single-player control panel or a 4-player control panel. I think, yeah, here's the 4-player there, and uses Suzo-Hap controls. Like Blake, I know, is one that was not happy with the joysticks on the 4-player EXA cabinet that I currently have, an older model, and they are a little bit loose, but these look like your proper bat joysticks, as they are often called, there. And as a part of that, part of their booth at IAPPA, they are bringing some new games that they're going to have their entire catalog there, all 31 games. One of them is a new version of Donut Dodo Do. I want to say it's Do, maybe it's Donut Dodo Do. I'm not sure, but this game is on Steam, but the EXA version will be modified. It allows 2-player simultaneous play, and the game itself is just kind of like Popeye meets Donkey Kong, so definitely unique. But it's also, from what they tell me, it's going to be a budget release, so that means if you're an operator or a collector with an EXA, you can buy this cartridge. It'll be under $1,000, and so you can enjoy that. So it's something that brings something classic to the platform. Now, I've seen some criticisms of the EXA platform, of a lot of people saying, well, you know, the graphics on this, like, the computer is obviously powerful enough to handle anything modern, but we haven't seen much that pushes it there. And yeah, I would like to see some stuff on there that pushes the platform more, but at the same time, having some content that's like a retro game. I mean, especially if you're going to have more arcades picking up an EXA and say they're a retro arcade, because the pricing on this is going to be one of the most affordable cabinets at IAPPA. One issue with a lot of the games that I've already mentioned up to this point is they're above $10,000, sometimes a lot higher. The price point for this, now it will vary because there's multiple distributors that will be selling this. It's well under $10,000, and so that's a big bonus. Happy holidays to you, Omni Mike. They will also have Arcana Heart 3 Extend, so this is supposed to be the ultimate version of Arcana Heart 3, which I've played Arcana Heart 2 way back when Andamiro actually brought that game over back in like 2008, 2009. But I've never played 3, but this will have all the content and supposed to be, again, the definitive version. And then there's one that I'm excited about, Jitsu Squad. It's a 4-player beat-em-up by, I think it's Tanuki Studios. And I've talked with these guys on Skype before. It's been a while, but I personally love beat-em-ups. It's one of my favorite genres, and so I'm very much looking forward to this. I believe this game is already available on consoles, but this will have, the EXA version's going to have more content on it than the home release, and so we'll just have to wait and see what content that is. But yeah, very much looking forward to that, because this will be a great game to add to a 4-player cabinet. You also have Shinorubi Pink Label, which is a shoot-'em-up that was unveiled at a special event in Japan back in April, but this is the first time that it'll be basically public to play. And then, as I mentioned on the blog post here, here's all the games that they're going to have available. I think what they said is they're going to have 16 of their cabinets available there, and so they'll spread out games across them, but because it's a cartridge-based system, they'll easily be able to swap over, and so that alone will mean that they'll probably have the most games at IAPPA out of anybody. And so, yeah, looking forward to that, as well as, you know, just having some pure hardcore non-redemption games around to play. We get to ICE. Now, these guys are usually called ICE, but their full name is Innovative Concepts and Entertainment. Bit of a mouthful, so that's why they always go by ICE. Now, let's go to the map. Oh, and by the way, EXA Arcadia has a pretty nice booth location. Like last time, they were kind of shoved in a little space kind of like this, somewhere in the rows. But they are right next to Betson and right across from Stern Pinball. So that's a pretty good spot. For ICE, they always have a big booth. Like big booths, and I cannot lie. All right, but here you go. But again, it's known as Innovative Concepts and Entertainment, and they usually do this where they have 2 rows, and they're facing each other instead of having a booth where a lot of them will have these like islands, or they'll do it in kind of like an oval sort of thing. But yeah, all their games will be facing inwards. Now for ICE themselves, if we go to their main website, there's a preview right here of what they are going to have. So they're going to have Dodgeball Ultimate Arena, the new redemption game. This one's kind of hard to see because it's behind the button here. Oh, it looks like you can see it better if you float over it. World Football Pro. Now, of course, I know in the United States we call it soccer, but everywhere else calls it football or futebol. And at least in Brazil they call it futebol. I'm not Spanish, I'm sure it's close, but I'm pretty sure over in the UK you blokes call it soccer. And then there's Shipwreck, which was a game developed by Play Mechanics. That's one thing. Play Mechanics and ICE have a pretty tight relationship, and so if there's any redemption game that's at the ICE booth, it's most likely been developed by Play Mechanics. And so this one was at IAPPA last year, Amusement Expo, and they have a new air hockey table. So whether or not they'll have more than this, I'm not sure. I don't think their IAPPA exhibitor profile, it doesn't mention anything. Like I said, a lot of the profile ones are kind of worthless. But I've seen some pictures of Dodgeball Ultimate Arena. In fact, there was an ad for it in Replay here. Oh yeah, right here. And I mean, I don't know, I haven't seen it in person yet, but the thing looks enormous. And so there are these 2 versions, your standard and your deluxe. But this is one game that's already available out there. I'm not sure what the price is. Now, back in the summertime, reader J. Devi had sent in a preview. Unfortunately, it was something on Instagram where somebody was taking a picture of something else, and in the background was an Atari Asteroids game that ICE was testing, and it was a cocktail cabinet. It looked like it handled 4 or 8 players. Now, I would assume that it would have been developed by Play Mechanics, because Play Mechanics developed their Centipede game. If you haven't seen that before, let's see if it's still on their website. Yeah, Centipede Chaos was an Atari game brought to life and brand new by Play Mechanics and ICE. And so they were testing out an Asteroids game, but I talked with Daniel at ICE. He's, I think, the head of the company or one of the VPs, and he was saying that Asteroids didn't make the cut. And that's not the first time it's happened with an ICE Redemption game. There was Tetris Dimensions that they tested out. Let me look it up here. Yeah. So over in New York, there was this that was tested. This was posted back in 2019. But when I asked Play Mechanics about it at the following IAPPA, they said that the game bombed, that they witnessed a lot of people who didn't seem to understand how Tetris works, which they were shocked by that. I mean, I was shocked to hear that. It's like, who doesn't know how to play Tetris? Are you kidding me? But they themselves were very surprised that the game didn't make the cut. So it can happen. Strange as that is, but you know, there always could be something else that shows up at the ICE booth that isn't announced. Next up is Imply booth 800. They are mainly a bowling company. They're based out of Brazil. Worthless trivia in Brazil they call bowling boliche, but that's just mainly what they focus on. But they have done video games before. They've also done some electromechanical games. The last time they did something was this iBowl Dinos, and it was just virtual bowling. And I think it could do redemption or non-redemption, but it was an interesting little piece. It would even blow smoke out of the little volcano on top, which was a nice touch. But again, their main focus is not really video games, so I won't really expect anything from them, but it could show up, because that's what happened with iBowl Dinos a few years back. Incredible Technologies, booth 813. Not expecting any new announcements from them. I expect it to be pretty much the same kind of thing as we've seen at the past couple of trade shows. So the main game that would be there would be Golden Tee PGA Tour, and then they'll also have Arcade Collection and Retro Raccoons. But I would be very surprised to see anything else from them there. They just want to focus on getting those games that are in production for out there. They do have some home versions, though, of Golden Tee, and actually all these games have a home edition. Oh, I'm not sure about Retro Raccoons, but at least GT and Arcade Collection do, and so they may have those there. Next up, Jet, or Jennison Entertainment Technologies, booth 1006. Now, these guys, I haven't always covered them because they've generally just been redemption and kiddie rides. Weirdest thing that I ever came across, though, was, I think it was 2017, 2018. They had some big new redemption game, and it was playing the Mario Kart theme song. And I brought that up to the guy. It's like, but he's like, no, I don't think our programmers would do that. I could tell he wasn't really a gamer, and so it wasn't something that he was really familiar with. But I was like, yeah, you guys might not want to be using that song. And as far as I know, they eventually did change it. But anyways, they did bring a video game to Amusement Expo 2022, and it was a huge surprise. Nobody had any idea that this was going to show up there, and that's on the screen, Quick Shot. And so this game is basically the guns on it are very cool. They were made out of metal, as you can see there. Very good force feedback. It's essentially Taito's On Point, where you're shooting at different targets. But this one, it had changed somewhat. Now, I had to apologize to the makers of this over in the UK. I think it was Electrocoin, where I thought it was just a rebadged version of On Point, but it actually was not. It's something that they had developed. It was just similar in style. But as you can see, you're shooting targets. It also has some military levels, like where you're shooting guys in a warehouse or something. Oh yeah, I guess that shows up right there. And So this could work as Videmption or not, just as a regular everyday video game. But yeah, I would assume this would be at IAPPA or maybe something else. You never know anymore. Pause that. Next up we got Jersey Jack Pinball. Now, Jersey Jack has kind of been avoiding a lot of amusement related trade shows. Like, they haven't been to Amusement Expo. Last time I'd seen them, I think, was IAPPA 2019. They weren't at IAPPA last year, but happy to see that they will be at IAPPA this year, where they're going to be definitely focusing on their latest releases, Guns N' Roses and Toy Story 4. So personally, I haven't come across these yet. Don't get out much. I'm always at the arcade. But yeah, I'll be able to get a chance to see them. Could they bring something new? Maybe, but I have no idea. I mean, they did bring on Steve Ritchie, the legendary Steve Ritchie, the king of pinball, as he's often called. So he's designing something for them. So whether or not it would debut here, I don't know. I mean, generally speaking, pinball companies like to debut stuff at Pinball Expo, as that happens in October. But, you know, you get a lot of also potential buyers at IAPPA just as well. So we'll see. And also, yeah, I know my pinball videos at trade shows are not the best because I'm not able to set up an elaborate multi-camera scheme like the manufacturers themselves can do. But I try to do what I can. But yeah, sometimes it's a little hard with pinball having not just the angles, but with the glass and the overhead lights, and you know, like in here. But yeah, I think I mentioned in the story here that it was an IAPPA where they unveiled Pirates of the Caribbean, which, as far as I know, is Jersey Jack's rarest game. Next up, we have Calcamat, or IGPM Group. Well, I'm pretty sure Fast and Furious will sell very well. It's just, like, me, I mean, Raw Thrills is one of the best earning brands that I put into my arcade. That's why I have quite a few of them. They always do well no matter what it is. But one, I guess, criticism I could have of Raw Thrills is that most everything they've done lately has been just so expensive that I can't get it. I mean, yeah, there is financing available, but a pair of Fast and Furious games, you're looking at $50,000. And so I really hope that they come out with a standard version, maybe one that just has a single screen instead of two, or maybe it has a vertical screen, because that seems like kind of what they were going for. But I don't know. Raw Thrills does like to, when they have multiple models of something, they like to focus on the deluxe version or the super deluxe version first, get as many sales as they can out of that, and then they'll come out with a standard version later on. And so that's my hope for it, because again, $25,000 per cabinet is just too rich for my blood. But it's great for if you have any family entertainment center near you, then they're probably going to grab a pair of Fast and Furious games. So I would not be surprised if it'll be easy to find out there. I mean, Cruise and Blast sold over 10,000 units, which in modern times is very, very good. I mean, most games maybe sell in the low thousands. You know, sometimes there's some, like, indie games generally sell under 100. They're lucky if they break 100 units. But major manufacturers, it's generally low thousands. But yeah, Cruise and Blast just blew the doors off of the sales there, and so I wouldn't be surprised if Fast and Furious is able to do a similar thing. But again, it'll do better if there's another cheaper option. Calcamat, IGPM Group. Calcamat's a Polish company. They generally make boxing machines, so if you've ever been to like a state fair or a bar and seen a boxer there's a very good chance it was made by Calcamat. IGPM Group is just a distributor that's set up here in the States. I think they're out of Chicago, where they are just going to be representing their different products. And so their newest thing is this one here. I know it's probably hard to see. It's called MMA Hit the Green. So it's kind of a punching kickboxing thing. So when the display lights up green or the LEDs light up green, you hit that target. If it lights up red, you don't hit it, and you just see how well you can do. So it's kind of cool. I saw it at Amusement Expo, but I think I missed out on filming it. Otherwise, they have alley bowler games and whackers. No, for those who don't know, I used to sell arcade machines, and I sold a lot of boxers. And I remember talking with some guys about it, and they would tell me that they could take it to one state fair. Like, these machines were in the area of $3,000 to $4,000, but one state fair over the course of 2 or 3 days, it would pay itself off already. I was just blown away by how much they can make, but it also depends on the location. Like, I've occasionally had people come into this arcade and be like, hey, do you guys have a boxing machine? It's like, nah, I don't, sorry. I'm not sure how well it would do in my situation, but a bar, anywhere where you got people wanting to show off, it's a great thing to have. But on Lee, can't you get a dual model for the same price as single? Fast and Furious, I've not heard that. I would be shocked if they were selling it like that. My understanding is if you buy a dual model, they throw in a free marquee. But as far as I'm aware, the pricing on that is around $25,000 per cabinet. So yeah. So maybe I do need to invest in a boxing machine. It's just, I know one thing that wears out on them are the bladders inside of the punching bag. But I also need to throw out there that oftentimes it's very confusing. There's a few different Polish manufacturers like Calcomat, Jakar, Wick, where oftentimes they're listing the exact same products, and it's like, who made this first? I have no idea. If they're ripping each other off or if they're licensing it from the other one, I don't know. It's not really clear. But Calcomat seems to be one that's been out there the longest. Anyways, moving on to LAI Games. Is it LAI or LAI? Probably LAI. They recently unveiled 3 games that are coming to IAPPA. So first off is Asphalt 9 Legends Arcade VR. And so this has everything you would expect to find in the DX version, but now with a VR headset. And so as the DX version has the gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. It has the motion. This has that too. I think it has wind effects and all that. So yeah, and that's the cabinet right there. Nice, sleek-looking cabinet. In fact, I hadn't noticed this previously. It has a little windshield there, probably made out of plexiglass. So if you're into racers and you've already seen Asphalt 9 Legends out there, I know Round 1 USA has them. I think they're all deluxe ones that R1 picked up. But, yeah. Guys shocked about another Dead Heat game? Well, sure. I mean, it's not too surprising to me. As far as I know, the game sold pretty well. I don't know what the exact sales numbers were, but the one issue with Maximum Tune for Bandai Namco from their perspective is it's not this big seller. Like, if you were to take the sales numbers by what I understand, because again, they don't share numbers, but I can pick up hints from how they phrase things. And Mario Kart sells a ton more machines than, say, Maximum Tune does. And one of the biggest obstacles in Maximum Tune selling is you have the kiosk, you have the online connection, and with the online connection comes a monthly fee. Now, I was talking with an operator out of Wisconsin where he was really on the edge. He really wanted to get a Maximum Tune, but he just couldn't get over that fee. He just eventually said, nah, I'm not going to go for it. Now, I like to tell people that ever since I got 5DX Plus, since I upgraded to that, it's become my number 1 game. It out-earns my Cruisin'. And it used to be the opposite. It used to be Cruisin' was always just very slightly ahead of Cruisin' Blast, and now of Maximum Tune, but now it's flipped. But so Maximum Tune does have a very loyal user base there. But the thing with Dead Heat is that it's like a casual version of Maximum Tune, and casual racers generally do really, really well, just like Cruise and Blast does. And so with that, that's where I don't believe it will have the Bana Passport, and so it'll come along, but it'll be an easy sell for them. I mean, Mario Kart's almost 10 years old at this point. I actually would expect them to come out with a new Mario Kart by now, so I am kind of surprised that they didn't do that, and they're doing Dead Heat there, so I would agree with you on the surprise being that. But we'll have to see. I mean, it's very possible they could have changed up some of the formula and could have made it a little bit more serious. I don't know. But here's the one thing, is that a lot of the time casual just earns better. As I mean, you would be sad by how many people I see pick automatic handling on Maximum Tune, but then they're constantly using the shifter. And I in fact, yesterday I had to tell a kid, it's like, hey, you're on automatic, right? You don't need, just focus on driving. You don't need to use the stick shifter. But like, there'll be these people that do this almost every day, where they're so casual that they think that just because it's there, it's almost like a kiddie ride thing, where they just think that it's doing something even though it's not. It's like, you picked automatic. But yeah, I'll get footage of all these games as I can. Mainly the video games, of course, and some Redemption, or most of the Redemption stuff there. Yeah. And so, but yeah, LAI will have Asphalt 9 VR there. They're also going to have Virtual Rabbids, the Big Ride Ultra HD, which uses higher quality headsets, 5K resolution with a wider field of view. Yeah, for anybody who's new here, if you go way back in my channel, now I know the quality goes down. I'm not saying my quality's awesome right now, but I've been doing IAPPA since 2009, and I think I only missed 1 year, excluding, of course, 2020 when it didn't have an IAPPA. But if you go into my channel and search for IAPPA, you'll find product videos way back, and I have improved in how I shoot them. I've gotten a tripod. Like, I used to not have a tripod and was just shaky cam, so apologies about that. But it's fixed from here on out. And but like every IAPPA, I'll get stuff from there. Yeah, Ted, I do agree. I mean, like I said, for me, I was the opposite of that Wisconsin operator. I was teetering between Mario Kart and Maximum Tune, roughly the same price. Maximum Tune was a little more expensive, but to me, the deal breaker as to why I went with Maximum Tune was, well, this has a super loyal fan base, and because of that, people will come. And no, yeah, people would play Mario Kart 2. I'm pretty sure that it would do just as well. But it's made up for it. There are so many loyal players for Maximum Tune, and they're also announced a new tournament for North America. So yeah, I know not everybody's into the Rabbids. I have kids, but they don't really watch the Rabbids, so I guess I haven't been annoyed by them. Oh, I updated their page, so there was a new photo there of the cabinet. Let's see if it loads. I guess my loading's taking a little bit of time here because I'm streaming. Whoever's in charge of the website at LAI, please put a clean image of the cabinet on the page. But you can see it there if I don't hover over it. So it looks like they have a twin model, as they call them, where it has like a connecting marquee. So that's cool. I don't know how many they'll bring to the show. But there's two other games that LAI has revealed is coming to the show. You have FGTV, Out of Time. As far as I know, this is a very popular YouTube channel. I've never watched it myself, but they have a video here showing how this works. It has a lever, and you're supposed to shoot the ball into it, or into the different things. And I'm guessing it kind of like pinball, depends on how far you pull it back. And then one that they're going to have a press conference for this one on Tuesday, I believe it is. They didn't say much about it other than just a press conference, but as you can kind of see there, it's a pusher, a chip pusher, ball pusher, marble pusher, I guess is the correct term to use there. And so yeah, if you're into Rick and Morty and redemption games, this one's for you. And so I'll definitely have to go to the press conference just to see what it's all about and everything. Well, I mean, LEI has brought Arcade Matt to their booth before. I think he's covered them. I wouldn't be surprised if he's at IAPPA. I saw him at IAPPA 2019. I think we just said hi, that's all. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if FGTV does really well, maybe there could be an Arcade Matt sort of thing. Could there be an Arcade Heroes arcade game out there one day? Who knows? I'm open to license it out and do something if anybody out there wanted to. I actually have had an idea for doing a comic book based on Arcade Heroes. I've even had a professional artist friend of mine come up with some I came up with some characters, but he made them look more comic book style. I just haven't gone through with that yet. I've been too busy. Yeah, but yeah, I'm pretty sure Matt will be there, and there's also Plush Time Wins. So they were at the LAI Games booth back in 2019. I met and chatted with them briefly. We both were playing the Outnumbered arcade game that they unveiled at that show, and they were doing tournaments on, and they won one of the levels. I won one of the levels, so we both got a trophy. Unfortunately, Outnumbered is no longer in production, I believe, because it's not on their games page anymore. Yeah, so I think I saw something about that from Alan on LinkedIn, but I did not get a chance to really look into that, so I'll have to give it a deeper look. Oh, Press Time Wins is in Japan. I did not know that. As far as I think, back in 2019, I thought they were in Florida, but I don't know. All right. Next up is a Chinese one. Their full name is, I think it's Shongshan Luck Game Amusements. Put them as Luck Game on the site here, booth 420. And they appeared at IAPPA, I think it was 2019, with this game that was totally I guess you could call it a ripoff or a love letter to Sega's Too Spicy. Now, I know not a lot of you might be familiar with Too Spicy because it's kind of a rare game. There's a screenshot of it there. And it was a very unique game where it was kind of a light gun game meets a one-on-one head-to-head fighting game. And so you would have one player would be on one side of the arena, one on the other, and you'd use foot pedals, kind of like Time Crisis, to move from one cover to the next. But then you would point your gun at the screen, but it had sensors to detect that, almost like a Wii game maybe. And you were trying to kill the other player, and they had life bars just like in a fighter. I think you had limited ammunition. And just like you see from the screenshot there. But again, very unique game, but from what I understand, it bombed. And so it kind of turned Sega off to trying some of these risky things, because you don't want to waste your money on some of these arcade games cost millions of dollars to make, and if you can't get that investment back, well, that can hurt your company. And if you make too many duds, then you go out of business. And so but anyways, it was very surprising to see this game that they call Super Firing at that show. I believe a newer version of this will be at the show. Hopefully they'd have two of them, because this sort of game's not quite as nice when you have just one person. But I remember another manufacturer guy coming, telling me about it. He was blown away by the graphics. I know that's one thing that people like to criticize with modern arcades, is they say, oh, the graphics are like mobile graphics, and that's not true. That's too much of a blanket statement. But I mean, I get it. Some arcade games are definitely not cream of the crop, top of the line graphics out there. But this one definitely did look nice. Solid frame rate, great textures, lots of plants, destructive environments, some nice lighting and explosion effects, particle effects, all that stuff. So yeah, you just, again, like Too Spicy, you're kind of just in a one-on-one arena. And so we'll see if that's there, if there's any changes to that. And of course, one challenge with doing videos at booths is getting the right angle. Sometimes you do get reflections from other booths in your thing. From what I understand, this company also does a lot of kiddie rides. They do some redemption stuff, but if they have this there, then it'll gain my attention. All right. Next up is Playmind, booth 1818. They debuted their Playbox at IAPPA 2019, and this is a huge ball toss game. This is another one where the graphics on these on the games that I saw were pretty sharp, very good, and this was one of their zombie games, but you could play up to 6 people at once. How's it going, Kelly? And they had some, like, everything on it was unique, specially developed stuff, but yeah, you just multi-game sort of platform toss balls at the screen. What they're bringing to this next IAPPA is a 4-player version, so a smaller version of this. They might want to put a wall up behind it because last time there were a lot of balls that people kept throwing over and hitting people in a VR arena on the other side. But like this game that I filmed here, it was kind of cool. It was almost like a light gun game. And again, the graphics on this were very nice lighting effects, looked very modern, and it just was a ball toss thing. But I bet you they could take this game and build a regular arcade light gun game out of it. So they'll be there. I don't know if they'll have anything else, though. They were soft balls, but yeah, I still saw some people complaining on the other side or looking very annoyed because they kept having to throw the balls back. And so I guess that's what you got to be careful about, so as to not have that being an issue. But it also just depends on how the booths are set up. Sometimes there are barriers that are set up, but in that case they weren't. So maybe they will. Oh, Federico, be happy to see you there. Yeah, we'll have to meet up. If anybody wants to meet up, yeah, you'll see me wandering around. So I initially had mentioned, I think on social media, that for some reason I was initially denied a press badge. They said it's because I'm an arcade operator. But out of the blue, they suddenly approved my badge after I called them directly, and they just said, sorry, we're not going to give it to you. But then like 2 months later, they suddenly just sent me an email saying, hey, here's your press credentials. It's like, okay, cool. So I don't know if it was just somebody there had a change of heart or somebody went to bat for me and asked for them to give me a press release. Whoever it is that made the decision, thank you. I appreciate it. But I'll be around. But I should also throw out or shout out one of the advertisers here, Primetime Amusements, was also willing to get me a badge so that I could attend the show, but that would have been like an exhibitor badge. Anyways, yeah, I didn't really get it either, but again, fortunately, it's been resolved now. But it's weird because the entire time that I've been going to IAPPA since, again, 2009, I've been an arcade operator, and there's never, ever been an issue. And so it is nice to have the press credentials because, again, you get all these press releases and you find out about press conferences. You can visit press conferences, and that allows you to get enough information because that's what I want to do here through this channel, through the website, is get you guys news about what's coming to the arcade market. And I know some of you are just players, some of you are operators, and so it's just about, getting that news there. So, yeah. But anyways, I'm glad that's passed. Yeah, I mean, I know I am in a weird spot, very weird spot, because I I'm an operator and I'm press. I do the blog and stuff. I write for Replay Magazine, and very, very few people would be wearing both of those hats. And like I said, I've also sold arcade machines before. The only thing I haven't done in this business is actually develop games, which is actually something I would like to do. Yeah, yeah, it's I occupy a weird space, so that might be why it was initially a problem, I guess. But moving on. Yeah, I mean, getting into the trade shows is not impossible, and actually, there's a lot of manufacturers. Like I know LAI hands out free badges, and so there's that, which helps. But I mean, again, there's some perks with press credentials, mainly that you get a lot of access to a lot of news. You can kind of figure out a schedule. Like one of the first things I'm going to go to on Tuesday is a press conference for a new product that Triotech's releasing, which is like 1058, I think. And then LAI has one that they're doing, but also just a lot of this information that I was able to get today was thanks to all these emails that I started getting from being on the press email list. And so, yeah, Blake, that's what I think about now when I think about LAI handing out the free badges. But yeah, if you know somebody at one of the manufacturers or distributor, it's not impossible to get a good badge. It's just, and like I said, Primetime Amusements was willing to get me something there, and yeah, so it's not excuse me, impossible. I didn't mean to have a drink for me, but I left it at home. I forgot it like an idiot. But yeah, there's ways to get into the show, and IAPPA does open up to the public on the last day, and I think it's like $30 or something. Do you need something? Do you want them on? Okay. Be right back. So stare at this thing of ice cold beer really quick. Yep. Reviewing the IAPPA show. That's right. Yeah, that'll be my first chance to try out Bond and see how that plays. Okay. So, next up, and if anybody was confused by what just happened, again, I'm in my arcade, and it's open for business, and so, but got an operator that I work with. He has some of the pinball machines here, so we're going to have a pinball tournament on Saturday, and he's here to fix things up before we get there. But I think I was saying that there is a open public day, usually the last day of the show, where you can go and walk around. But just one thing to keep in mind if you ever go to IAPPA, I mean, I would recommend it if you're into the industry. It's awesome. But, I mean, the map doesn't fully convey just how enormous it is and how much walking you have to do. So if you're into walking or cardio exercise, you will get your steps in for sure. Now, I know a lot of people that exhibit at the show, they oftentimes have to stay at their booths and they're not able to walk around. But I've heard in the past that if you were to walk like up and down every single aisle throughout the entire convention center, it's 10 miles. And then, of course, there's stuff outside, too. And then you have to do walking afterwards, you know, to get to your shuttle or to your car and go to your hotel or to after parties or whatever. And so yeah, and so I definitely feel you if you can't make it, but that's one reason why I'm going, is because I want you guys to be able to see all this stuff. I mean, granted, I don't know if I'll be able to live stream from the show. I will attempt it with my phone, so don't know about the quality there, but one problem oftentimes is in the convention center, the Wi-Fi signal sucks, or there is just a lot of crosstalk because every booth might be setting up some sort of thing, and then it's just very difficult to get a strong signal, but I'll give it a shot and cross our fingers and see if I can do any live streaming. That's another benefit of a press badge too, is being able to see that, because if you don't have a press badge, then you have to make sure you get any permission from the different booths to film stuff, and they may say no. I've seen some people like security telling people to stop taking pictures, stop taking video and whatnot, but they would let you do it if you have a press badge. So that's why it's a big deal. All right, moving on. Retro Arcade, booth 1717. Now, I am perplexed by what's going on with these guys, because they were at IAPPA last year. They were at Amusement Expo. He's developed a complete reproduction of Taito's Ice Cold Beer. Jump ahead there. And he had an original one there. I think that's what this one is on the video. Wait. Oh no, sorry. This was the reproduction, but he had an original there next to his new one. Looks exactly the same, like down to every nanometer or centimeter or whatever. And all the artwork does. It's just that the artwork is brighter. And so this has always been a popular game for bars, and so they're just remaking this so as to bring it back. But I've been trying to find out from them. They told me in the spring that they were going to release they were going to do the production in the summer. But I had his business card. I emailed him. I called him. I texted him. Nothing. So they are at the show, but I just don't know what's been going on. They might have reached some sort of production snag. Their website also is kind of terrible and didn't have any information on that. But they'll be at the show, so we will see. Next up is Sega Amusements, booth 1010. And Sega's mentioned a lot of stuff as to coming to their show. Their booth isn't the biggest out of all the amusement places, but as they mentioned here, they actually updated their exhibitor profile. So as you see here, turbocharge your business with Bop It Arcade, Drone Racing Genesis, Jumanji, Men in Black, Mission Impossible Arcade Deluxe. That's not the big oval version, that one that you go into. That's the Super Deluxe. The Deluxe is the one that they debuted last year, where it was the stand-up model. And then also VR Agent, Storm Rider 2, Crazy Rafting, Augmented Reality Darts, and Power Roll. Now, let me see. There's another game that I haven't seen them announce yet. Oh yeah, I opened up right to it. Right. Don't know how you guys can see this from the replay preview. It's called Pirate Captain. So this one's a redemption game, but it's a redemption shooting gallery made for 2 players. Beautiful themed artwork and bright LED attracts players young and old. The multicolor ship's steering wheel creates an eye-catching feature. The intuitive gameplay sees players shoot the targets as they light up, keeping players engaged and trying to win as many tickets as possible. So that may be there. And if we go over to SegaArcade.com, go to games. And this is where you can see some of them. So Crazy Rafting is one that we mentioned months ago. This was developed by a Chinese company, I think Wallop. But it's basically Namco's Rapid River. And it has a 55-inch monitor, and the oar set has a motion base, and you go rafting down a river, and it's crazy, I guess. I don't know, have any of you guys seen this game out there? I haven't yet. So there's a photo, nice little touch on the, like having a real raft, sort of there. And they also have some new branded basketball and air hockey machines, but I guess nobody has seen Crazy Rafting yet, so this will be my first time seeing it too. There's this Storm Rider 2. So if you're into motorbike racing games, hello Jason. This will fit that bill, and this uses Unreal Engine. I believe that would be Unreal Engine 5 or Did they stop calling it 5 and now they're just calling it Unreal Engine? But this definitely looks to have a different vibe to it than the original Storm Rider. The original one was more of a technical racer, and you had a rival you were racing against. This one looks a little bit more like Superbikes, you know, where you have stunts and things blowing up, and just a little crazier sort of racing, less realistic. But again, using Unreal Engine, the 5 or whatever it might be, pretty cool. It has a motion base, it has a swivel bike, it has a touch screen, it has a bike upgrade system, 47-inch monitors, comes as a twin model, can link up 2 twin models for a total of 4 players. So looking forward to seeing this one. And then there's this one that I know a lot are curious about. This is definitely a break from the standard Sega racing that you have seen generally, because most of the time Sega's dealing with cars or motorcycles, but here they're dealing with drones, and so yeah, we will see how this plays. I am very curious as well, because it's not many racers where you race with a joystick, but of course drones themselves do have like thumbstick sort of things. Oh yeah, Jason, that's right. You mentioned that. So yeah, I don't know if you caught already. I will be at the Raw Thrills booth. If they have a Chapter 4, they'll definitely tell me about it. I know for certain there's a Series 2 cards on Minecraft. It's just I hadn't heard anything about a Chapter 4 for King Kong. They'd only talked up to Chapter 3, but they could certainly make another one. I think that would help any units out there. More content's always welcome. And yeah, I'll definitely see or ask about the 60th anniversary to James Bond at Stern's booth, which is actually, I think, the booth I'm going to talk about after this one. But Drone Racing Genesis, and yes, I'm sure everybody thinks of the Sega Genesis when they see this. Yeah, you fly a drone and you're trying to go through the different rings, targets. Oh, okay. I have to admit, I haven't played the Yakuza games, so was not aware of that, but that would be a nice little nod. Like, I know the city here is from, this is Metro City that shows up in Daytona Championship USA as one of the tracks. That was a flip of it. Is it Seaside Galaxy? And I also want to say this city also reminds me of the cityscape scene in Dream Raiders. And yeah, I did talk about Andamiro already, and Pump It Up, but don't expect to see Chrono Circle there. But yeah, should be interesting to see this. I mean, at first I thought this was a motion-based, but it's not. I mean, if this game does well, then I would not be surprised if Sega comes out with a Motion Deluxe version. It might just be to save on costs, they come out with the standard version first. I do think it would be cool if they do a deluxe version to have like a spinning fan here to look like a drone blade, of course behind plexiglass so somebody can't stick their hand in it, but very interested to try out this game at the show. And so yeah, Sega's bringing lots of video goodness there. Oh yeah, you also mentioned the Bop It arcade, and so if anybody's ever played with a Bop It toy, this would just be a giant version of that. And they also have a picture of the control panel, so you can bop it, pull it, flick it, or twist it. And you know, the faster you do that in the correct order, then the more tickets you win. Oh, I hadn't noticed this one before. The is that Spin It? Huh. So interesting thing. But yeah, Ted mentioned in the chat that licensing issues had prevented this from coming sooner. So I wouldn't expect anything else from Sega. They're pretty good about previewing everything and sticking with that. But that's okay. There's plenty of new stuff to see there. It doesn't always have to be a surprise and all that stuff. Step Revolution, booth 638. Now, my first version of the post was just saying, as far as I know, they're just going to have Step Maniacs there and nothing else new. But then last night I saw this image where they mentioned that we have something new to show you. And it says new product here and then big, beautiful, and bold here. So Is that a deluxe version of Step Maniacs? Like a bigger cabinet? Or a cabinet with an enclosure or something? I don't know. Or is it maybe their own take on something like Dance Rush, something completely new? I don't know. But I assume that Step Maniacs will be there. But definitely interested to check out what else they have. And here's Phil. He's been a reader of Arcade Heroes for many years, and he generally comes and checks out the show with Andamiro, and so I imagine I'll see him there. So if you're watching, Phil, hi. I'll see you in Orlando. Stern Pinball, booth 412. So would not expect any new surprise. Now, granted, Gary Stern did recently mention something as being a big game changer that's coming to pinball. Don't know what that might be, but they'll definitely have James Bond there. And like I said, I'll ask about the 60th anniversary edition because that hasn't been unveiled yet, as far as I know. They'll obviously have stuff about Stern's Insider Connected and Godzilla and Rush and probably some tournaments, stuff like that. But I can't recall any IAPPA or Stern unveiled a game there. They usually like to just do what they always do and go either through somebody like IGN or somebody connected to whatever the theme is, or something like that, but pretty much never would they use IAPPA to be the launch pad for a new game. Team Play Incorporated. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Team Play is made up of a lot of ex-Midway guys. In fact, I think the leader of Team Play was one of the VPs at Midway. But they unveiled at Bowl Expo back in June, July. This Redemption game, it's a wheel-spinning game, but it has LED panels integrated into it, so you have this very cool-looking display that spins. So I know this game's been out for a few months. I don't know how many locations have picked it up. So I'd expect that and their Kiddie Ride photo booth. I think it's called Photo Ride. Would they have anything else? I don't know. It's very rare that Team Play does a pure video game. The last one that they did that I recall was Family Guy Bowling. So I guess they could have a surprise. Another one that I'm not sure if I'll even bother filming them is Techway, and they're at booth 1602. The reason why is last time I found anything worth filming, like a video game, at their booth was 2011. So they deal a lot with oddball redemption games and stuff, but this would be a very early, crappy, super pixelated version of Dino Survivor, which they developed this dinosaur shooting game before Raw Thrills did Jurassic Park. But I'll check them out, see if there's anything worth seeing. See if there's anything worth seeing. That's very bad grammar. I'm sorry. Really Big Crane Company, booth 215. And so these guys, as a crane company, I generally probably wouldn't pay much attention to them, but they have some involvement with play mechanics. And as they've brought to the past several trade shows, there's this video basketball game, Zombie Jam. And now at the last IAPPA, they had this version where they changed the software. And so it initially was a 2D game with zombies climbing up ladders, and you had to throw the basketballs to knock them off the ladders. But then they changed it to a much nicer 3D, and instead the zombies rise from their graves. And it'd be great if they had the Altered Beasts voiceover there for that, but they'd have to talk to Sega or do their own variation. But as you can see there, you throw basketballs. It's kind of like the Connect 4 Hoops thing, and it's a video game. So will they have something new along those lines? Maybe. Last IAPPA, they were also showing off a new card system. A lot of people have card systems. I'll pause that so it doesn't keep going. And then we get to Trio Tech. They have two booths, 5424 and 5818. Now, one odd thing, Trio Tech's usually not within what they call the Games and Arcade Pavilion. So you might have noticed on the map there's these different colors. And these are supposed to indicate that they try and put companies that are related to each other within the same area. Try, but they're not always able to, just due to I don't know, space. Sometimes you have overlapping ones like Zemperla. They just make giant rides for theme parks and stuff. But, you know, you can see they overlap 3 different areas. But the games and arcade focused pavilion is here. But Triotech's almost never exclusively there. Usually they've been up in this area. But this year they're way over here. Oh, yeah, here we go. So if you're wanting to see them, that's where you got to go. But they've stated, and I got a new email about this morning, but it was kind of the same thing, that they are going to unveil a revolutionary coin-op multiplayer game at the show. And JDevi did find out that there is a trademark from Triotech for something called Cube, and you'll notice that they have these Cubert-like cubes here, and you can kind of see through the shroud there, but not really. It's obviously some sort of enclosed sit-down game, but what's going to make it revolutionary? I don't know. Nothing in the emails indicate that it uses VR, so maybe it's like mixed reality using projection mapping or augmented reality, but I don't know. I'm very interested to check it out. And just checking the chat here. Do I know if Sega's going to do anything with Mission Impossible? Well, they mentioned that they'll have Mission Impossible Deluxe. If you're not familiar with that, this is what it is right here. So they'll have this at the show, but I would not expect them to do anything else with it. They probably don't bring the Super Deluxe just because it's going to cost you a lot more to ship that, and you know, you got this already. But I've seen some Super Deluxe models out there. Haven't seen any photos of a location that has the Deluxe model. So that'll be there. All right. And then we're almost done with the arcade stuff, and then I'll get into VR. So in case anybody's here for the VR stuff. Eunice, booth 1306. So they sent out an email this morning detailing what they're going to do. So it looks like they're trying to compete with EXA Arcadia in number of games, because their email states over 30 games will be at the show, and they also provided a link to their catalog. Now, I didn't go through and count all the games here, so I don't know if this was 30, but this should give you a pretty good idea. This is their new thing, Sailor's Quest VR, which looks to me like a combination between Dead Storm Pirates and maybe just something unique, or a newer version of Dead Storm Pirates, but with VR. All good? Okay. All right, see you, man. Thank you. So let's see. So 1 to 2 player interactive VR, action-packed gameplay, destroy enemies and find treasures, upgraded HP VR headset. Now, I don't religiously follow VR tech, so I don't know what model that would be, but maybe it's the latest of whatever HP's doing. 3 display screens, surround sound. Now, when I saw that, I was kind of confused because I only see this as a display screen. I don't know, maybe they have something on the back, but I don't know where a third one would be. And then a 5D motion platform, vibration speakers, wind effects, and safety features. Hard to tell how the motion is just from this. It doesn't look super deep, so I don't know how much might just shaking you around, but I'll see it there. Let's see. Power Puck Fever, multi-puck action air hockey table. So kind of like the Pac-Man, is it Pac-Man Fever? That table that with all the multi-pucks that came out several years ago. Star Crusaders 2. I've never seen Star Crusaders 1, but it says a pirate-themed adventure. Okay. Not sure why it would be called Star Crusaders, but yeah, Redemption game. Redemption, merchandiser, crane, and video game in one with work zone. First arcade game designed for blind box prizes. Crane machine stuff, kiddie ride, pogo jump. Yeah, so yeah, that's Eunice there with a lot of games expected. Let me just check the chat. Waiting to see if Pump is getting an update past Mope Mope, another song unlocks. Yeah, I mean, we'll see the new software there, but from what they said in a comment, is this won't be a new version of Pump It Up, just new software. But whether that means new Pump It Up would come in January 1st, because Andamiro's always liked to do a new Pump It Up thing on January 1st. I don't know. I mean, it might either be Amusement Expo, which is March, I think, or next IAPPA, which would be November 2023. Almost done with the arcade stuff. We have Valley Dynamo, booth 2000. Would not expect any video games there. Just like air hockey tables. And they have a new one called Black Thunder, which is coming. And then Wick, booth 843, another Polish manufacturer. Generally speaking, they don't unveil their stuff. Like, here's their website. They have like video game kiddie rides and a paintball water gun game. But I don't know if anything's like new or not. So, and then some honorable mentions. There's redemption focused and crane focused companies like Comuse, S&B Toy Company, Smart Industries. JDevies sent me some, I know there's a thread on Reddit right now about some new robot arm crane that Smart has been testing, at Dave & Buster's. But from anything that I've seen on Smart Industries, they've not mentioned it at all. And so if that'll be there, great. I can get footage of it if somebody cares. If not, then I'll probably just take a look at it. But I guess somebody in the chat will have to throw out what the newest DDR is. I think it's DDR A20. That's available over in Europe, but the problem is here in the States, Konami just does not really exist anymore as an arcade division. So there had been a Konami Europe, but even that division I don't think exists anymore, like Konami Amusement Europe, something like that. And so when you don't have anybody around that really understands the industry, it makes it really difficult to do. And that's one reason why there was that infamous version of DDR that Betson did that had the very poor dance pads and stuff. And so is it A3 is the latest one? Okay. Thank you. It's like, yeah, the DDR is imported by, I think, Round 1 USA and Dave & Buster's, but everything I've always heard, I don't know if this is true, is that like if a small operator like me wanted to get DDR, I would have to purchase like a container load of DDRs. And it's like, who's going to do that? I mean, if you get several operators together that want to do that, that's great, but you essentially need a distributor here in the States that it's like, okay, I could sell enough of these new ones that we will buy a container and then we'll sell them to operators one by one. But I don't know of any distributor out there that does do DDR for the States anymore. Like the primetime one I mentioned, I know that they get a lot of calls. They tell me all the time. They're always asking if I want to sell my DDR. But they always get a lot of calls for used. I just don't know what the interest is that they see out of new ones. Yeah, it's like Blake's saying, you have to buy a minimum of 50 machines, which is untenable for a single operator to do. So that's something where a distributor out there like Betson, Primetime Amusements, Moss, Schaefer, Player One Amusement Group, whoever, they really need to be the ones that buy one or two containers to equal 50 machines and then sell that off. But they're not going to do that if they don't think they can sell them. And by my understanding, your new DDR is not cheap. It's going to be well above $10,000. And so it just depends on demand. If there were enough operators out there willing to do it, then sure. And is there a market for rhythm games? Absolutely. I mean, Step Maniacs has been showing. Like I follow their guys on social media, and they're always posting about new locations grabbing as Step Maniacs. But they're, at least when I bought mine, it was under $10,000. I think some of the prices have gone up due to inflation, production issues, etc. But yeah, this is why
places like Round One USA and Dave and Buster's are the only places you usually see a lot of these rhythm games, is because importing is not cheap. And I think Round One is, I don't know if they do this with all their games, you guys can correct me, but they do translations sometimes, and I do know that translations are often very expensive. Like, I've heard quotes of $30,000 to $40,000 for doing the translation, and then of course that has to be spread out across the games. And so yeah, it's $18K for the newest DDR. And see, it's like, that's a really hard thing to justify. Again, it just comes back to big FECs with big money can do it, but a small guy like me, it's like, well, do I want to spend $18,000 on a DDR, or do I want to spend $9,000, $10,000 on a Step Maniacs, or $12,000, $13,000 for a Pump It Up? It sometimes price really matters, and so that's why it's so hard to find DDR out there. And now, if Konami would actually set up an amusement division in the States again, and then be able to work out something that's more sensible with distributors, not requiring a minimum purchase of 50 machines, or just what most distributors these days do, and this is inside baseball, but what they do, they don't actually keep equipment at their locations anymore, or like have a showroom. What they'll do is they'll get an order in, and then they send that order straight to the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer gets it ready, packages it up, and then they'll ship it directly to the customer. And that's a lot more economical than a distributor setting up a warehouse, buying all the games, and then taking the risk on whether or not they'll actually sell them or not. And so yeah, with that's the reason why you don't like, certain game genres are very difficult to continue selling these days. But again, it seems like Step Maniacs has been doing a really good job. I know Pump It Up has done a fairly decent job as well. I mean, obviously not so much since the pandemic, but it looks like they're going to try and make a bigger push to come back that way. But I don't know how many new locations that never had a Pump It Up before are buying one. That's one thing that I've noticed about Step Maniacs, is they're getting that machine into a lot of places that normally may only have some really, really old DDR machine. So very interesting discussion. I'll have to have one of you guys on to do a rhythm game discussion, maybe a stream or something like that one of these days, because I am, as much as I try to be an expert about arcade machines, rhythm games sometimes goes over my head. I don't know the differences between all the different versions and all that stuff. So anyways, for augmented reality, virtual reality, attraction-focused booths, this is the part where we get here. Now, I know not all readers are really into this, and so that's why I kind of separated it out into a different section. But there are some interesting things, and like I just said in that video that I posted yesterday about virtual reality, is I believe it has something to offer to the industry. I just don't buy the claim that it's going to replace the arcade. And so, yeah, but what I do like about it is it's trying some different things. A lot of times the arcade industry just focuses on gun games, racing games, and maybe rhythm games. And they haven't really branched out into other genres so much in modern times. Now, that's one reason why I've focused a lot on EXA Arcadia, is because they've been pretty much the only company coming around with brand new fighting games, beat-em-up games, classic style, retro games, stuff like that, and bringing that back. But VR has been one place where augmented reality, AR, mixed reality, MXR has been doing stuff that's more innovative and interesting, and again, it's trying to do stuff that sometimes you can't do at home. Now, when I see one of these VR companies offering the same software as what you might get at home, then I'm really not interested. It's like, who's going to really want to do that? Other than to maybe just see if they want to buy an HTC Vive or a Quest or something. But yeah, with these, it can be interesting what they do, but it also, some of the content sucks in VR. Sometimes the graphics suck, sometimes the gameplay's not very compelling. Like, stand in a spot and shoot at things that come at you, and you can only do that so many times before it's like, meh, whatever. But like, but some of them are trying out different things, and so let's discuss those. I did mention coin pushers a little bit previously. Personally, that's not. I'm not a big fan of redemption stuff. I've never been into coin pushers myself. If somebody really wanted me to film some coin pusher stuff that's at this show, I can. It's just usually not something that I'm focused on. I don't know. It doesn't feel like much of a game to me. But anyways, Box Blaster VR booth 1888. They should have an Old West theme, from 1888. They'll probably have their Box Blaster Arena running the latest software. Whether or not they'll have the Golden Mace game at their booth, I don't know. They might just keep that at the Elaut booth, but I haven't heard anything from them. Creative Works booths 4072 and 4271. Creative Works has always been one that's kind of confused me because it hasn't been clear what they do. Best I can tell, they're kind of like a distributor. But like they do things like theming and prop work and stuff like that, and so it's kind of a blend. I saw last year they had some sort of new concept with miniature golf too, called Lucky Putt. But yeah, it's always been a little strange with what they do to kind of nail it down. But they've worked with a lot of third-party VR companies, and so like one of the things that they're going to really be focusing on at the show is this limitless VR, and from what I can tell, this is kind of sort of like what the Void had promised. If you're ever familiar with what the Void is, they went bankrupt, but it's a VR arena, but they actually have walls and props and things, and then in the game it's mapping those, and so could be interesting. I mean, I used the Void, and what was weird about it was, because what the Void was is they set up an actual physical maze, and you put on a headset, a VR headset, and wore a backpack. It felt like you were in a laser tag arena. But then you would walk around this arena, and they would map the VR stuff to it, and it was kind of cool, or pretty cool. But the only weird thing is that your perception of where you think that the virtual surface was and where the actual physical surface was, your brain had a hard time sometimes figuring that out. It seemed like when you expected to touch the wall, it was a few inches more, and so you might lean in to it. And so, but granted, to be fair, I played a very early version of the Void, and so maybe in their final ones they improved that. Maybe with Limitless VR it's also improved as well. But they have an 8 and a 16 player version of that. There will also be the VR Fury Solo, which I mentioned on the site here. Let's see. Here we go. As debuting at IAPPA 2022, and this is what it looks like. This is the cabinet, from my understanding, is designed by a company called VRarsenal, but they've licensed it out to a company called VR Studios, who is now doing the VR Real Sports. And so last IAPPA they had a basketball shooting hoops game called Hoops Madness, and at this IAPPA they have Football Frenzy, where I think you're a quarterback. And so, as I also mentioned in my VR video yesterday, I would love to see more sports games being made by just regular standard arcade manufacturers, like, something like an NBA Jam or a NFL Blitz. I meant to have a drink. I'm just talking a lot more than I usually do. So that'll be at Creative Works. There's DOF Robotics. These guys always have super impressive stuff. They do things really for theme parks, but it could go into some FECs. But as their name implies, like, they do these massive ride machines with hydraulics and stuff, moving rides, and they've done a lot of stuff with VR. But they recently posted this video showing like this kind of escape room like experience where you're going to Mars, and so this has nothing to do with VR. Whether or not this would come to IAPPA, I don't know. It doesn't seem like something that would work at a trade show. But that kind of gives you an idea. Last year they had one of the most impressive things at the show was a Gravedigger VR, where they had the Gravedigger monster truck, and it was the size. Actually, I think it was bigger than the actual monster truck, and you would sit in it and you would put on a VR headset and it would do this ride sort of thing. That's DOF Robotics. Hero Zone VR. It's a company out of Belgium that uses MetaQuest headsets. I don't know much more about them than that. I haven't seen any emails, so don't know. This is one that's getting a lot of hype from Hologate. They have booths 2883, 3083. I'm kind of surprised that there isn't like a VR pavilion. Like they have rides and equipment, games and arcade, water park, show production and design, food and beverage, always nice. Beaver Tales is always one that's impossible to get into. Family Entertainment Center Pavilion, inflatable, first-time exhibitor stuff. But notice like DOF is here, but they're just kind of spread out. And so I'm surprised with as many companies as there are that are focused on something like virtual reality that they don't have their own pavilion. But anyways, they'll have this impressive Ghostbusters VR Academy 2-story thing. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if like certain FECs that don't have the ceiling height to fit that sort of thing in there maybe just have the driving section on one side and then the walk around arena one on the other. But Hologate's pretty popular. I know they have over 100 of these installed across the states or the world, possibly up to 200, I don't know for sure. But this Ghostbusters experience, it's like a training academy, training you to become a Ghostbuster. And so you learn how to drive the Ecto-1 in their motion seat, but they call this the Blitz normally. But then you also train to be a Ghostbuster, zapping and trapping ghosts up on the other level. So I'm sure that'll be very impressive, and the line for it will probably be ridiculously long. Next up is Innowise, and they're a Romanian company. Now, they've had their own kind of Hologate-like arena out called Arcadia VR. I've seen them before and filmed it in one of my VR compilation videos. But they've come out with something new, or coming out with something new at this IAPPA called Cubics. And in this video, I think this is the CEO of the company is explaining how it works. And so they've developed this unique controller, kind of like a Wiimote, maybe a little bit more accurate than that. But I asked them about this because this is designed to be an unattended sort of experience, but the controllers have alarms in them. So if somebody tries to steal it or take it away from the machine without realizing that they've kept it in their hand, the alarm will go off. So that's a nice little feature. But they projection map onto these walls. I think it's 3 walls, and then up to 6 players can play a game. And so they've developed their own games. Each one's unique and looks, at least from this one, kind of like shooting games and kind of a wraparound thing. And so almost like a giant arcade machine that you step into, an enclosed arcade machine. So one nice thing is, since this does not have wearable tech, that reduces the price immensely. And so they didn't share the price exactly, but it did mention that it would cost a lot less than their VR Arena. And so I'll be there to see this and their VR Arena, check it out, because I don't think I'd used their VR Arena before. Lasertron will be at booth 1800. They're a laser tag company, so normally I don't really cover that. But last year they did show off a new axe throwing thing that is mixed reality. It was projection mapping targets onto the wood, which was pretty cool. So whether or not they'll just have that or something new, I don't know. Max Flight, they're always at the show. They always have very impressive simulators for like simulating fighter jet flights or space shuttles or roller coasters or something like that. Popular with museums. Haven't seen them at too many FECs though, but they could go into one. Phenomenon, booth 5609. They also have a free roam VR arena. Their main focus is competitive esports. And they posted a video on YouTube of Space Dance Harmony, which to me looks kind of like Let's Dance by Ubisoft, because like everybody's trying to come up with a Beat Saber rhythm game sort of thing, where they're in the chat a few moments ago, we were really talking about rhythm gaming stuff. Like VR is really making that push because, at least from my perspective, it seems like the only thing within the arcade VR arena that's stuck out has been Beat Saber. But of course, the license to that was revoked, and so you can't do Beat Saber in any sort of these things anymore. And so all these companies have been coming up with something to try and offer a Beat Saber like or a rhythm game like experience, but you have to try and make it a little bit different. And so this one looks like, again, kind of like Let's Dance. Relix, probably Relix. Booth 838. It's a Brazilian company where they were at IAPPA last year. They were at Amusement Expo. So they have this kind of... let me see if I can find them within the video. Here. Oh, here's Arcadia VR. That does the Cubics thing. Now, I did not see these guys. This video is Amusement Expo. I didn't see them on the list for IAPPA, but I might have overlooked it. If I overlooked anybody, my sincere apologies. Here's Relix. So they have, I think it's 10 virtual roller coaster experiences. One thing that sets them apart is the seat does not move around, which reduces the cost. It does vibrate though, and so that combined with the VR still immerses you to a degree. I imagine the vibrations increase depending on what's going on there. But my guess is they would just be focusing on that instead of something new. Spree Interactive booths 3888 and 3889, and they also tend to have free roam wireless arenas. Used to be known as Holodeck VR. I've not used them. From what I've generally seen, they have like adventure-like experience instead of fast action sort of things. It's usually more like almost maybe like an escape room might be the accurate way to put it. But if I'm wrong about that, my apologies. Just from what I've observed, that seems to be what they do. Talon Simulations, like I had no idea that they make stuff for Dave & Buster's. For quarters? Hi. How are you? Yeah. Here you go. Okay. If there's something off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on.
No, it's over there.
Well, no, those don't use tokens.
No, the one over there, like the cars.
Yeah, but that doesn't use tokens.
No, not
I know. That's what I'm saying. Everything out. Okay, but what I was saying is if you want something that's on, I can turn it on. Let me check here. I got another guy that walked in. Gotcha. All right, but Talon Simulations, they're the manufacturers, I believe, of that the VR stuff that Dave & Buster's has, from what they say. At IAPPA, they're going to have this Talon Vortex thing, which seems to be like a multi-game VR platform that you sit down in, and so you can do racing or you can do flight stick sort of stuff. Probably a jet, maybe a starfighter. So that'll be there. Don't know how much it costs. With a lot of these things, they don't always show the price, but it's, like I said, it's been really rare to find anything under $25,000. A lot of it's been in the more $50, $60, $70, $100,000 range. In fact, I saw a price, I think it was the Limitless VR, is almost $200,000 for the 16-player. To be more accurate, $175,000. Velomotion, they are an interesting company. I didn't see them until last year. I think they've been around longer, though. But they focus a lot on exergaming, so exercise, like jumping around on a trampoline. They have an interactive climbing wall where you climb up this rock wall sort of thing, but then you have to hit targets and play stuff like that. And so I would call them more of a mixed reality focused company than a VR one, because I haven't seen them do anything with VR. It's more been just the stuff like this. VAR Live is a Hong Kong-based VR company where I've seen them before, where they have like a first-person zombie shooter game and a single cabinet for that. Not sure if that's what they showcase here. Oh, you can look around, and then I screwed that up. Darn. That does not want to work on this. Made for VR, obviously. Virtuix, booth 1828. This is a company that's been around for a while. Omni Virtuix Arena, and so there's a few of these out there. I'm not sure how many they have, but one of their main things is that they have the omnidirectional treadmill, and I have a footage of this from when they debuted back in 2015. They initially debuted with Eunice and then went off and did their own thing. But as I was talking about earlier, with everybody trying to make their own sort of Beat Saber game, here's theirs, and that would be Rhythm Master. And so this one, you're supposed to walk in the treadmill while you slash at the targets. And just doesn't seem like it takes you in any other direction. It's almost like you just walk forward the entire time. I guess it would be interesting if you could change directions, but maybe they tested that and that didn't really work out. VR Coaster, German company focused on adding VR2 roller coasters. Like if you've ever been to a roller coaster that had VR headsets, that's what they focus on. That's all I know about them. VR 360 Action at booth 4882. And so here's a kind of a corporate promo vid that they sent me. And I've seen them at several trade shows. I want to say maybe far back as 2018 or 2017. But they've always have a bit of variety, and so they have like motion simulators, as you see there, kind of like virtual reality roller coaster sort of stuff. The one on the side there was a plank walking one. I want to say that they've had something that looked like a Tron bike before, but yeah, just lots of different stuff that they. Oh yeah, there it was. There was a Tron bike. And so VR shotgun, VR tank, VR kiddie rides, I guess, too. So here's what that looks like, I guess. VR dinosaur. Hadn't seen that one before. But, yeah, everything VR with that one. VR Elaut USA, they have a... self-service VR cabinet, arcade cabinet. And see, so it's like statements like this that I don't always agree with. It's like implying that VR is gonna replace the arcade, but their thing says that they have a system to sanitize the VR headset using UV light, and then they have some interesting controllers there. Will Raw Thrills remake San Francisco Rush? I have no idea. I think I mentioned that to Eugene Jarvis once, or I saw an interview where he mentioned it would be cool to remake San Francisco Rush. The problem is that everything from Midway and everything from Atari games, which would be all the Atari branded games from 1984 till 2001, including San Francisco Rush, are currently owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. And I've talked with some people in the industry who have said that Warner Brothers... sometimes their licensing is difficult to deal with. It's not impossible. I mean, there was the Batman arcade game from 2013, but that a lot of the licensing costs on some of the like Midway and Atari games, it just doesn't work out for what makes sense in the industry. And so it could be done. Hey, please don't let her do that. Please don't do that with the shifter. There we go, with the shifter. I mean, it could happen. It's a question of cost. Like, I've talked with people and say, you know, what about a Mortal Kombat arcade, a new Mortal Kombat arcade? Like, the licensing alone is over $1 million, or around $1 million. And that means that the cost of the machine goes way up. And there isn't an appetite for certain games to come in at certain prices. Now, where you have like Fast and Furious at $25,000 a cabinet, I mean, if that sells really well, maybe that could happen with San Francisco Rush. But I don't know. Now, of course, San Francisco Rush does have a different style of racing than what Raw Thrills usually does. It's been very rare that Raw Thrills does closed circuit type courses, which, you know, that's what Rush did. But, you know, I'm sure they can make it work, or they may change the formula a little bit, like a little bit of cruising with a little bit of Rush. I don't know. Interesting to think about. I mean, I think I think any new Rush on the market would do really well. Again, it just comes down to licensing. And from what I've read in the news, Warner Discovery's in some pretty deep trouble right now. Like, I think it's read something about how they only had enough money to launch 2 movies this year, and this is one reason why they keep canceling stuff, is because they've just been hemorrhaging money, I guess. But I haven't looked into all the numbers. Good question. So next up is VRsenal, booth 427. And they have Rhythmatic 2, again, another rhythm game. But with again, VRsenal designed this cabinet, which is designed to be unattended VR. It's just, the problem I have with this is that the headset could definitely fall on the ground. If I was a location with one of these, I'd want some foam padding or something on the floor. But even then, it's just like, I kind of cringe when I see the ability of a VR, something as expensive as a VR headset, to be able to drop on the floor. And so that's just been the thing that, to me, with this sort of cabinet design. And so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, they could do it like H2 Overdrive. I mean, again, it's not impossible. But like the company that did H2 Overdrive is no longer in existence. I mean, the guys are still around, like Steve Rank. But they sold Specular Interactive to Take-Two, I think it was. But that was years ago. So I guess they're just not into doing arcade games anymore, unfortunately. Our last one for VR is a company called XR Immersive Tech Synthesis VR, where last year they debuted this uncontained VR, which was, they took a shipping container and turned it into a VR room, a multiplayer free roam VR experience. So yeah, that's the IAPPA preview. Is there anything that anybody missed that you want me to talk about? Anything else that you want me to focus on? I mean, again, it's a massive show. I do everything I can to film arcade-related, mainly video arcade, pinball sort of stuff. Oh, did they add something? Now, was that motion simulator the, what was it called? Valkyrie, I think? Because the Valkyrie was the last project that they did, and it was very cool, but that, yeah, they did that, and then it wasn't long after that they ended up selling the company. And interesting, I do remember seeing the Specular guys sitting down with Sega at that show, the last show that they were at, and so it looked like Sega was interested in using their services. While they mainly worked with Raw Thrills, as the motion simulator showed, they were willing to work with other companies, but I guess just after Batman and the Valkyrie simulator. Yeah, Project Hades. Yeah, that was it. So that was several years ago. They were working with a company out of Korea at the time called Simuline. And then they changed their name to something bizarre that was kind of unpronounceable, 4D 5J Plex or something weird like that. But yeah, that was their last project, but it wasn't long after that they sold the company off and whatever assets. So as far as I'm aware, Take-Two Interactive, I think, would be the ones that actually would have the rights to H2 Overdrive and Dirty Drivin' and Project Hades. But great guys. A lot of them were ex-Midway, and so it was sad to see them move on from the arcade business as it was. I guess we could look at the map really quick. A lot of these I mentioned already. Oh yeah, Unity Technologies is there, but it's been kind of weird. They've taken a totally different route. Because they're the ones that created the Neon FM rhythm game. They did World's Fastest Drummer. But then they just started doing stuff with like casino, gambling machines, and they were working on a card system at one point, and just doing all sorts of different stuff. But I haven't heard anything from them in a while. But they're going to be there in a small booth. Oh yeah, Sam Billiards. We are a global company. Okay. It says they do table games, billiards tables, hockey tables, soccer tables, cranes, and claws. They're based out of Spain. Primetime Amusements, again, a shout out to them for their help with some of the stuff I'm experiencing with IAPPA, or was. They're still going to be helping me out with something there, so again, hat tip to them. Oh, here's the Virtuix. So, like, yeah, they're based in the... I do notice this year they're putting more VR stuff in the games and arcade pavilion. Sometimes you'll have things like prize places for redemption desks, Classic Toy, Redemption Plus. Some are distributors, like Primetime Amusements is the distributor, Player One Amusement Group. I have no idea what Good Stuff is. Oh, licensing product company. So for Redemption... Smart Industries, pretty big booth. Sometimes they don't have booths this big, so I'm kind of surprised how large that is. Retro Arcade, as we mentioned, Ice Cold Beer will be there. Innovative Concepts, mentioned them already. Apple Industries is a photo booth. Hi. Okay.
Hey, can we turn on basketball?
Okay. Here's your tokens. Be right back. Apple Industry, yeah, this gets very confusing. A lot of people think this is the Apple company. It's not. They're a photo booth company. I did see that they are going to have a new photo booth because they haven't unveiled a new one since, I think, 2019, if I'm right on that. But, big booth. They gained some, I don't know, infamy or notoriety several years ago at a Vegas amusement expo because they hired some pole dancers, very scantily clad pole dancers, to help draw people in. It worked, I guess, but I heard some people that were offended, some people that liked it. It's always some love-hate stuff that can go on with that. Unis Technology, very big booth, 30 games. You gotta have the space. Same with Coastal Amusements and Baytech. Or I guess I'll go like this. So Team Play, actually a much larger booth this year than they had last year. Digital Center, they're another photo booth company based out of Europe. The Arsenal also has a very large booth. Well, on their website only shows Rhythmatic 2. I wouldn't be surprised if they have more stuff. When they first debuted, I think it was 2018, they had Beat Saber, Fruit Ninja VR, and a Predator game, although the Predator game never came to fruition. So maybe they'll have something else other than Rhythmatic. Here's the Calcomat company I mentioned. Elaut has quite a bit of space there. Something called My Arcade. Retro gaming for a new generation. Manufacturer and distributor of portable, licensed, and generic retro gaming devices. Sounds kind of more like an arcade one-up, maybe? I don't know. A&A Global Industries, I think they deal with redemption prizes. Quick and Crispy sounds like food. Yeah, concession stuff. Univest is a financing company. Automatic payment systems. So, I mean, there's a lot of like support type companies that are around there, so just deal with software sort of things and other stuff that's not necessarily games. What's Lucky Core? No idea, they don't say. I mean, if I was an exhibitor, I would make sure my profile would be something to capture attention, Chaos cards, next generation of greeting cards. Okay. Magnetic Cash, probably a card company, card swipe for arcades. GP. Oh, the Vortex tunnel. I see this at every trade show. It's this big spinning tunnel that you can walk through. Gives you a little bit of vertigo. And then Betson, as mentioned, pretty big space. BMI Merchandising, they sell toys for redemption desks. Amusement Connect, they're a card swipe company that's becoming more and more popular. EXA Arcadia, biggest booth that they've had at a trade show yet. A really big crane company, same size. Wallop, oh, I forgot to mention them. I'll have to put them on the back on the post. But they're the ones that develop or sell games like the Storm Rider 2 and whatnot. They're kind of more of a distributor. Like a lot of the games that Wallop sells are developed by a company out of Taiwan called IGS, and then they just kind of distribute them throughout Asia and through North America through companies like Sega, as Sega's carried a few of the games from them. There's Incredible Technologies and some other... Oh, I forgot to mention Baron Games. So as far as I know, the product they'll have is called Birdly VR. So it's another VR one where, I mean, Baron has dealt with foosball tables, air hockey tables, kiddie rides, stuff like that. But they've been getting into VR in recent years. So Birdly is one where you're sitting down, looking down, and you have the VR headset, and makes you feel like you're paragliding or you're a bird, and it has a fan, stuff like that. So I guess I should have double-checked this whole map before I posted or started the stream. There's Stern right there. Pretty big booth for Stern. Sometimes they have something more of this size, but they got more space to use up. Pipeline Games, they sell mainly like crane, merchandiser stuff. Amusement Source International, I already mentioned them. That's where they're at. Axiom Holographics out of Australia, I believe, and they deal with like 3D glasses type games. Then usually along the walls you have these companies, and they can vary as to what they do. This would definitely be the largest booth I've ever seen for VAR Live. In the past, they've just been connected with a distributor. I can't remember if it was Schaefer or another one, but no, I don't recall seeing VAR with that big of a booth by themselves. Pizza, hey. Chicago Gaming Company, that's where you'll find some more pinball. Christmas lighting and decor. Not sure why that's in the arcade pavilion, but maybe they have some decor that would work for an arcade. There's Andamiro, so that's where you'll find Pump It Up somewhere amongst the other redemption games. And there's Schaefer. Yeah, I think it's Schaefer that's carried VAR Live before. Let's see if there's any other small one here to mention. There's the Imply Bowling Company I mentioned, and Bandai Namco Amusements. So that's... Oh yeah, and then don't know why they have these lines here. Up here, there's Jersey Jack. Pretty decent sized booth. Some of these I do not know what they are. Enclu. Mixed reality. Huh. And for those who said that they want to go to attend to something like IAPPA one day, it's always a decent idea to check the map first so you can kind of get an idea of where you're going. I mean, it can be fun to just wander aimlessly too, but sometimes if you have a limited amount of time, you may want to be focused on that. Digiphoto booths, okay. Comuse, they're expanding. They seem to be getting bigger booths, but they're just focused on redemption. I'm always surprised by how big Embed booths are. I mean, they're a card swipe company. Yeah, they should have maps. They generally, IAPPA has this, when they open the doors, they have like an IAPPA daily, and it's like this little magazine that they print out, and I think they print one for each day. And within that, it should have a map, or I think you can also just grab some maps when you get your badge. and everything. But yeah, Kubica AMF, another bowling company, one of the bigger names. And there's the Rylix or Rilix. I'll have to ask them how you're supposed to pronounce that. Oh, American Pinball is just outside of the area there. But they are by the overpriced food service there. Unfortunately, you don't really have much of a choice because there isn't any like fast food really close to the convention center, and you've already walked a lot, so that's why they can get you. That's where Step Revolution will also be, close to them. Adrenaline Amusement. Oh, here's one that I missed in the VR section, Ballast VR, where they have a VR slide and turn any swimming pool into an interactive ocean. Oh, okay. Interesting. So, yeah, Moss Distributing, their distributor. There's LAI Games. They have a pretty big booth. And generally speaking, LAI Games, one side of their booth has this giant kind of fake brick wall as well. Korea Creative Content Agency. Okay, so there's been this weird thing in past shows. I don't know if there's a legal reason for it, but there's been like a Korean section. And I'm not sure why that is, but maybe it's just because they're being represented by one company that brings all these different products from different Korean companies together. But I've seen some things. But I've also had some manufacturers talk negatively about them for like different companies there, as claiming they're stealing their stuff or something. I don't know about those allegations, but yeah, they do keep their stuff, and there are some interesting stuff that I've seen in the Korean section before, mainly dealing with robotics. And there was this one robotic foosball table that I saw once where instead of just being the fixed guys, you would drive these little remote control robots around the playfield. It was pretty cool. And then, yeah, when you get into the show production and design pavilion, I mean, some of the stuff is really just for theme parks. But once in a while, you can come across some really cool things, mainly dealing with robotics, that you can find. And then, oops. In the first-time exhibitor pavilion, I mean, sometimes there can also be some very interesting things here. Several years ago, I came across Pinball FX doing their virtual commercial cabinet, although as far as I know, they never released it for the commercial market. But you can get an odd variety of stuff over here, but also just some cool technology. That's one of the things that I love about IAPPA, is you also just get to see some bleeding-edge tech stuff at times. And so that's where it can be cool. But yeah, I think that covers it. You can see some of the companies that I mentioned at the VR side here, Creative Works, Inawise. And there are some I'm not into inflatables, but there are super impressive inflatables at every IAPPA. You know, stuff that's taller than a house, and you know, just crazy stuff. And it's also fun to go out to the outdoor exhibits because there's oftentimes just some cool things that you see out there. One IAPPA, I saw this thing where it had this, I think they have them indoors, where they have this super powerful blower that launches the person in the air, and then you can do flips and stuff. And so maybe that's what Ninja Jump is. I don't know. Oh, bounce houses. Okay, maybe not. But yeah. That's our IAPPA preview. Again, thank you for watching, and if any of you are there, I hope to run into you, say hi, and be fine to have a chat and meet some of you guys that I've only talked with over the internet. Again, I will be posting videos when I can. Internet is a little bit spotty at the show, and I shoot in 4K, so it makes the files kind of big. I'll get anything really important out of the way as quickly as I can, just to the site. I will see if live streaming is possible from the show, but it might not be. One thing I would like to try, if I can get in before the show, is take my drone camera and film Drone Racing Genesis with that. Just a nice nod that way. I may also take my capture device that I've used to get direct captures and see if I can get the back of any machine opened and do some direct capture from anything. That might be cool to do. Because most of the time the only stuff I can direct capture is stuff that I've bought, and I can't afford to buy all this stuff, so that limits what I can do with direct captures sometimes. Okay, you're going to be there the last 3 days. So yeah, I'm going to be there on Monday, which is actually before the trade show portion starts. It's an education seminar day, it's good to get there a little, for me, for what I need to do. Good to get there early and get some stuff out of the way. Maybe go out into Orlando if I get a chance and see any arcade stuff that's out there. I'm leaving... I need to double check my itinerary. I'm leaving Thursday or Friday, one of the two. Yeah, you do need the time. With as much stuff that's there, if you want to get a good chance to really play stuff. Personally, I get in the really bad habit of maybe talking too much, so my apologies in advance of that. Got to get a chance to play everything that you can play and check out all the new products. And yeah, like I said, most of this stuff should be coming to an arcade near you either by the end of the year or within 2023. There might be something here and there that gets canceled. There also might be some surprises that I wasn't able to cover here, and I'll cover it for the blog. I will be posting videos to YouTube. I will be posting stuff to the blog as well. Keep track through Arcade Heroes social media. We have our Discord. We have Gilded as well, though we haven't really had much interaction on Gilded. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And I am on Instagram. Maybe Instagram this will be the time where I'll actually bother to post stuff on Instagram, just because usually I'm sharing links instead of photos of stuff, and so that's why I don't use Instagram too much, and Instagram sucks for links. But I'll do my best to keep you guys apprised. And again, if there is anything that you really want to see that you heard about in this preview that you want me to focus extra on, capture extra footage of, let me know and in the comments, and we'll do it there. But it seems like this stream went well. Anything else you guys want to throw out there, ask about, talk about, whatever, before I end the stream for good? I probably won't be able to fit this microphone in there, so although I need to find one of my my detached. I have a smaller detached mic that I use sometimes. I guess my camera's been kind of poor frame rate here, huh? I hadn't been looking at my camera in this, but don't know if I guess everybody might have left already. Do we even have anybody with me anymore? 10 of you still around? Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for watching this preview. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys next week, and then we'll have lots of videos coming to the channel for the next few weeks, probably. It generally takes me some time to do some editing and go through. Sometimes I've been contracted to shoot some videos for some distributors as well, and so I think it was 2019, I filmed over 200 videos. And so I spend my flight back just video editing, but then, of course, the next few weeks I'm editing and trying to get everything out. But okay, my voice is about to die, so I guess I need to save it for IAPPA. But thanks again for watching, guys. We'll see you.